Prologue. As General William Tecumseh Sheridan pointed out in the late 1870s, war is hell. In the hundreds of years that have passed since Sheridan and his army burned the city of Atlanta, Georgia to the ground, many people have expressed their agreement with this statement. What no one has ever pointed out, however, is war is temporary. Some wars have been short, some unbearably long, but all wars, without exception, come to an end. The same is not true of hell. Hell does not finish. Hell is not temporary. Hell is eternal, and it is populated by the lost souls caught in the temporary insanity of war. Those left behind with nowhere to go when it was over. Time moves on, as it always does, and recollections of war grow increasingly dim until they pass from living memory. Events become stories which morph and mutate in a generations-long game of Chinese whispers. Winston Churchill noted that history is written by the victors, but without reliable methods to create and preserve a record of events as they happen, history passes away with the people who made it and is replaced by whatever stories people remember. And when the major portion of daily life is taken up with matters of survival, people don't remember much. Only those with full bellies and a strong sense of security indulge in the luxury of looking backward. For those not so blessed, history is merely what happened before they arrived. In this way, human history on Earth came to an end. Most people had always thought of the end of human history as the end of time itself, when the universe finally ran down or blew up or went out like a light, an event that might or might not involve the appearance of a deity who would sit in judgment of humanity. But there was no bang, just a whimper so faint no one heard it. History came to an end for a very simple reason. After the war, no one wrote any. Before the war, there had been a multitude of cultures that shared their advances in science and technology to accomplish extraordinary things. Chief among these were the Sky Cities, 12 shining metropolises that floated above the various locations around the world. People had considered them proof that humanity had truly reached a high level of development, even enlightenment. At no other period in human history had there ever been cities that flew. People up there lived with privilege and comfort, and people down below looked up at them with pride and hope. Then the Great War broke out, harsh and violent and deadly, as wars always are. It killed billions of people, laid waste to the world and everything good about it, and sent what mankind thought were their last, best creations crashing to the ground. All, that is, save one. Devastated and traumatized, humanity didn't pause in its fight for survival to write history. There had been a war, an enemy had attacked, and people had fought them with everything they had. Lives were lost, property destroyed, hope obliterated. What else was there to know? The survivors at ground level gathered in the shadow of Zalem, the only city still flying, and they cobbled together a semblance of civilization, structures to live in made from scraps of metal and rubble, in a society made from scraps and ideals and order. A hierarchy developed, with those who could thrive and prosper at the top, and everyone else jockeying for the next most desirable position below them. Welcome to hell. In order for hell to be truly hellish, however, it needs an audience, someone to watch and appreciate it, to be enlightened by what transpires, or, at the very least, entertained, but not passively. Pre-war technology had made many of the entertainments of the day interactive. There was no reason that shouldn't continue. It was a small audience, but then Zalem's population wasn't very large, to save wear and tear on the environment. This also allowed them to enjoy more comfortable standard of living. There had been a lot of changes in the flying city. Nothing could ever be the same after the war, and most of those changes were philosophical. Once the actual hostilities ceased, Zalem's residents saw the virtue of a more structured society with a stronger leadership. Everyone hoped war would not come again for a very long time, but when it did, having a distinct and strong authority in place would prevent them from becoming hostages to misfortune. In fact, unambiguous leadership was crucial to their survival now. The carefree days of plenty when there were a dozen sky cities and travelers came and went at will were gone forever. What hadn't changed, and never would, was Zalem's complete dependence on ground-level support. The ground-level world would gladly, willingly continue to support the last remaining flying city. Zalem symbolized the peak of human accomplishments, and showed that, someday, humanity might reach that peak again. Until then, however, there could be no travel between Zalem and the ground. Aeronautics was a lost technology, and besides, it was the best way to maintain stability in both places. Everyone had to agree to this. They had to be united under a single authority. The best single authority to oversee both Zalem and the ground-level society that came to be known as Iron City was someone who could literally oversee them. Zalem's leader took charge, appointing a chosen few to be his representatives on the ground. The leader had lived a very long time, longer than most people knew, and far longer than any of them would have imagined. He was far too old to be excited merely by the prospect of having power over heaven and earth. Power was boring unless it was gratifying. His long lifespan made him an expert in gratification, and he knew that there was none in simply being an overseer. He had to be a watcher in situ, but without having to leave the comfort of the flying city. Thus hell became interactive entertainment, and the watcher's feet never touched the ground. As for history, it was irrelevant. What happened yesterday or the day before or last week was important. History was gone. So there was a great war against an enemy. So what? Nobody remembered who fought or why. It was 300 years ago. Get over it, why don't you?